Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome to another episode of Finalysis Arcane. I'm Callan, this is Matt.
Oh, hello.
This is Evan.
Every guy.
And this is Fran.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about, in full depth, with immense amount of spoilers included, the great work of Arcane, recent animation that's come out, well, semi-recent, recent for us, and we're going to be talking about that. Starting with general thoughts. Who wants to start off with that one for this?
I'll start off, I guess. So general thoughts on it are that it's fantastic. It's almost completely, I would say, perfect. And it's not like I never use that word, but I'm a bit stingy about it. I have two very mild complaints that will come up, but otherwise, I loved every frame of this show. Visually, it's. You called it in our 1 minute spoiler free review. You called it like the best animation that you've seen in a decade. Fully agree. Like fully. It's just and it's not just the animation quality. It's like the choices they make are so stylish and unique and filmic. It's so cinematic. It's wonderful just on a production level. Add on to the fact that it's got such amazing storytelling going on. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever seen, period. So that's me right there. So anyway, who's next?
Wholly agree.
No,
Sorry, I'm good.
Oh no, I'll just say, basically everything Matt just said, I completely agree with. What really amazes me about this show is that every single scene, every single frame, it all has purpose. Every single line of dialogue, every single, stylistic choice all serves the narrative of the story. There's absolutely no wasted space whatsoever. And that just makes the rewatch value so high, because there was literally never a point where I was watching this where I was like, oh God, where's this going? I'm just getting bored. No, not at all. I was engaged the entire time. Like I said in the spoiler-free review, again, as someone who knew nothing about this world going into it, I loved just how great they pack it all in so well. It felt so rich to me. And again, despite the fact that it's only 9 episodes, I became a fan of this world just from seeing this, and I just cannot praise it enough.
Yeah, I think I'm similar. I know this is the level of power that I feel Arcane has with how visually beautiful the story is and the world is, and just the fact that it feels so real. It did nearly make me want to start playing League of Legends before I was told to never play League of Legends.
That was a fantastic game, by the way. It's a fantastic game, but you don't need to know anything about it or have any.
I think you're the only one, Callan, out of all of us who's played it, right?
Yeah.
I definitely haven't played it.
Yeah,
I
will
only
not,
know
just
about
because
it.
I have no time for video games in my life. But this was fantastic, and I didn't need. I felt as I was watching it, I don't need to be familiar. It's doing its job. It's telling me what I need to know when I need to know it. It's off. It's just awesome. It's perfect.
But as Fran said,
anyway,
it does say something for the work that someone knows nothing about it and probably has no interest in the game anyway. It's still should I check it out? That's the best advert right there. If anyone in the exec room needs to be told they need to make more of these to get people interested in their products overall. It doesn't get much better than this. It really.
And you absolutely. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
No, I was gonna say, and you absolutely do not have to be a fan to get into the series either. You don't have to be familiar with it whatsoever, but you'll get it by the end.
Yeah. I think the thing that made me laugh a little bit is because it just, I know it's not true, but it's something that just in my head was like, wow, I can't believe Riot Games created a game just to create Arcane. It was just the initial hype up to this TV show.
That's the thing about this. It has no right to exist, let alone be as good as it is. This is not a show.
Yeah.
I say it's obviously it's coming out in a wave of similar shows at the moment, and they're starting to lean into that more in the industry and creating these kind of new works. But no one, I think, even fans kind of anticipating it, was going in expecting it to be this good. This isn't just a really well done video game based story. It's as Matt said, it's basically perfect. Obviously, it has flaws, but there's a degree of things where the flaws are so insignificant you can still call it perfect for me. And I think Matt agrees. It's one of those ones where any flaw you do find is just blown away. It's not like it's no integral.
The flaws, by the way, spoiler, my flaws are very minor.
Yeah,
they're
likewise.
in no way should they like dissuade anyone from watching this. They're just little niggling things that
they're things that every
Yeah.
work has, and the fact that you don't care about them and certainly can't find any significant ones, and we've tried because it's what we do with when we watch things. We go, what's the best way we could change this or improve it or all that jazz, and it really does lack those. It's just that good.
And how often can you say that about a freaking video game tie-in?
Yeah, well, anything.
Well,
anything.
yeah, exactly.
But
like
especially
never.
a
Like,
video
but
game
yeah.
Yeah.
So much. This came out like toward the tail end of 2021, and there was so much amazing television that year, like great television, and this stands up with any of them. The only reason why I don't think we'll get tons of this kind of stuff, even if there's people who want to make it, is because this had to have been extravagantly expensive. I don't know what it would have cost, but I mean, every frame of this is so rich, and then that's just the visual side of it. All the other parts of the production, I mean, I can't imagine it had to be way up there, but this sets the benchmark. Like, this is the new bar, to beat. It's amazing.
Anyone who's thinking about putting out a show based on a game like this is gonna be, oh great, I'm gonna have to restart from scratch because I can't match that. And it's partly because League and its counterpart Dota in the industry is got one of the most loyal and large fan bases of gamers ever. So even if it was absolute crap, they were guaranteed to get a huge viewership. So starting with that benchmark is certainly giving them a safety net, but they don't need it. It stands by itself. Fans of just shows and content everywhere are going to love this. And I've yet to meet a single person who hasn't not just liked it but loved it. So even on like the subjective level, without looking in the objective quality of the whole thing, it's clearly standing out and really shining in this already pretty heavily golden age of television. It's got a lot of good competition right now. And it's standing out.
Yeah, I would say just one thing I want to give for an additional, more outside of Arcane itself, but the fact that this TV show led to a discussion for how animation writers and animators should be paid better in the industry is top tier excellence from an audience. To look at this and be like, these people need to be paid so much better for the incredible work that they're doing, that it's leading to changes in the industry. Like, that in itself is incredible, even besides how good the show is itself.
Exactly, yeah. It's standing up on quality levels with competitors that have to do not less work, but certainly in certain areas a lot less that is appreciated. So they're just managing to hold up and make changes within the ways. And it's certainly going to bring a hell of a lot of tag-alongs and wannabes and copycats, which is, if done well, only a good thing.
Can you imagine how this would have looked if you traveled like 70 years into the past and met an animator and showed them this series?
Oh yeah, certainly. But the interesting as well is that they haven't revolutionized in terms of the base animation quality. It's all style. It's how they've used the animation they've had and how they've integrated it with the style of both with music and with the as Matt said, the cinematic.
It's the choices. It's the choices they're making. Yeah,
the actual fluidity of it, which is the baseline analysis of any animation, is about the detail, fluidity and detail. It's not that much more impressive than the great works you've spoken about before. It's everything else. It's their choice. They're making the right choices and making everything just pop off the screen.
As with many things, the real. Oh, sorry, Fran.
Oh no, Evan, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as with many great works, it's all about finding that balance between multiple attributes. Like, you can have an amazing story, but terrible actors in animation and music, or the reverse. You can have great animation but terrible music. But the fact that it all just fits together so well, just again, it's just incredible. And again, 9 episodes, 9 episodes. Like this is not something that, like, well, you can binge it, but it's not going to take you very long. But again, and they use every single second of it to maximum effect.
Exactly.
It's just it's just a testament to just story pacing in general.
Yeah, specifically on that pacing note, it feels longer than 9 episodes to me. When you look back on it in your head, it doesn't feel like a 9-episode series. The amount of content they pack in for the time they have is extremely well handled. It feels like every episode is far longer than the 45-minute slot they've given it.
Which definitely worked to its benefit. If this was like 22 minutes apiece, there's no way it would have been as good.
Absolutely. The entire way you have to design a story about that, it changes with that mentality. So I'm glad.
However, I will say that the point when I realized that I thought this show was already special was probably exactly the 22-minute mark of the first episode, because that's when they get into a fight with like the bullies or whatever in the streets who are trying to take what they their plunder. And I was already like, okay, we're on like a little adventure here. We got like a little friend group or whatever. This one's the misfit, and she's like younger than she's bad at everything. Okay, well, whatever. And I'm going, I like it. I already like it. But then they got into a fight and they started losing the fight. Right. And I'm like, oh, this is real. This is believable. These characters aren't going to just waltz their way through the plot. It was the first sign that something really like different was going on, and that was like probably like the more minor great thing in the episode even. But I was like, this is something. So I'm already like full attention at that point. So they did well with just 20 minutes, and then it just keeps getting better. So yeah, it's an amazing show.
It's funny.
And then you get to episode 3 and then you start crying.
That's when it suddenly kicks off and gets into the real like top tier leagues in that one. Yeah, but yeah, Matt, that particular scene, I remember speaking to you about it when we first watched, and that was the same moment where I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be good. Like, this is going to be really good, because it's the first instance where they establish that the kind of appreciation and focus on the weights of each story decision in the writing process. They actually take the time to make that fight. Not only do they lose, which is an importantly a significant point by itself, but the fact they take the time to focus on how they're losing, the cost of getting into a fight in real life terms, just the injuries they're sustaining, the fear, the danger of it escalating after the fact, all of that stuff.
And also
they spend the time looking at that.
The fact that they can fight, especially Vi, but it's not like, oh, I've been trained my whole life. Like it's not like we just in this world everybody
like
has
scrapping.
like a.
That's basically what it is.
Yeah. It's like everybody has like some tournament fight in the middle of the street or whatever. Like, it's like, no, it's just like a brawl, and it's like messy and ugly and terrible. And, it felt real again, or like believable. Like when you're dealing with fantasy, realism is not important, but believability is important in all your stories. Right. So, and it's perfectly believable.
Oh yeah, totally. I think the thing that stands out to me is that in those first, I think it's technically 25 minutes, because it's a scene that sort of follows a little bit after when they're in, I think, is it the same first episode? All the episodes mixed together, because I just saw them all as
right. No, like
one long story.
It's not important how they're separated. Yeah, it all flows so well.
Yeah. But it's a scene. So it's the opening scene, not opening scene, but the scene where Powder is struggling to kind of freaking out about jumping, a major gap between the buildings, and Vi talking to her and keeping her calm and like showing confidence in her. And then the scene with her basically looking down at the guy who's got a knife pointed at her and basically says, try me, like see what's going to happen. And you instantly get the two different distinctions of the kind of person Vi is: soft, kind, caring sister, badass who will kill you. Well, literally, can you guys swear on this, by the way?
Yeah,
you swear?
Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Who will literally cut
I don't know
a
if
bitch.
I can take it. Go ahead.
But the way it's portrayed, but it's not just about, and we'll get to the main character of Vi in a second when we go for the character stuff, but it's not just about saying, look how much of a badass his character is. Not even remotely important. That's obviously a factor. It's establishing that because it's so early in the series, but it's focusing on the fact that these are the consequences. You, non-really named character, not important character, are you willing to face the consequences of your actions here? Because again, it's establishing that this is a dangerous escalation. It's not just a thing you just do and then the plot waves and moves on. That could have ended poorly, and it's important to establish that, because later on, only 2 and 3 episodes later, it does end poorly. This escalation happens. It's a microcosm of the entire political situation currently going on in the lanes and the larger city of Piltover. They put the thought into this. They've thought, why are we showing this scene? It's the microcosm version of what we're trying to establish for the entirety of the rest of the series, and it builds it up and gives you that initial springboard for what happens next. It's masterfully done.
It's so well done. The pacing, and just like it's like, I can't remember who said it earlier or if it was in the non-spoiler section, but every single thing has a purpose within it, which is like why those dual scenes of her care for Powder and her love for Powder, and then the fact that she will hurt people when she needs to, like she's not afraid of hurting people, showing those two different sides of her personality is so important, because it sets up the two different sides of her and the two different paths that will be happening throughout the story for her character, alongside like everyone else. Like everyone has these two defining scenes for them as characters that are important for the establishment that will happen later down the line in the story. And that's just the first episode, and I'm already just like, I can't remember.
Well, that's the thing. It's like,
sorry. No, I was just like fangirling, freaking out.
That's okay. I was just gonna say, that's the thing. It's like, there's a difference between just regular animation and animation with character acting. The ability to express a certain attribute of a character and their, relationship to others without directly throwing it in your face. You really do get a sense of who all of these people are, even the ones that don't really last for very long. They're, the way. Well, sorry, what were you gonna say, Matt?
I was just gonna say, like, that goes to Callan's point about the proper subversion of expectations. There, I mean, it's that term is almost like a joke in itself because of things like Last Jedi sparking that kind of conversation online. But it is. I mean, it's masterfully. That's to the writing. I mean, the writing on that level, it's like, yeah, they know that these characters aren't going to be around for very long, Clagger and Milo, but they don't treat it. They don't forecast that at all. It's very much like, okay, this one's Sokka, that one's Katara, this one or whatever. Like they're going to be in for like the long haul of our little adventure here. This is our new Avatar group, kind of like analog. Not at all. But that's the way that they make you. That's the way they set it up. Is like, this is the team, and then it goes away, and then you guys are talking about like the purposeful or the purpose behind like this animation and like the characters getting depth. What continually surprised me in the best way is how, yeah, it's Vi's story, it's Powder's story, but then these other characters start filtering in, and they're all at no point. I almost feel like it's definitely like those two are like the mains, but everybody feels like a full on character to me. You know what I mean? They just keep on coming in, and I'm going, why am I following this Jace person? Oh, he has a backstory. And who's this? Oh, who Victor, vague European bad guy, I guess. Oh no, he's got a lot going on too. And it kept progressing that way, where every character gets not just like their moment to shine. They just feel integral to the story. It's like, it's not just it's more than a moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
beautifully done.
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few
Sorry,
we keep doing that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, and there's actually quite a few flashbacks throughout the series, dedicated to a specific character. But what's great is they don't make the flashback mistake of like going on for too long or not giving us the information that actually relates to the story proper. Every single flashback actually has some relevant point, and it's just long enough for you to understand who this person is without making it feel overdone. And I really appreciate that, because that's something that a lot of shows and even some movies just do not get at all. So that's, again, it's just another way that this show just exceeds, in its pacing.
And again, it's not just
the choices of like when they do it too.
Yeah, it's not just the initial establishment; it's the actual development and then reinforcement of that all throughout the story. Every aspect of quality you see in this show, be it the pacing, the animation, development, whatever, everything we've spoken about already, you see it introduced very early on. You see it reinforced and reestablished immediately following the kind of first finale point of episode 3, and then it continues to develop it all the way through. There are very small dips where it has to spend the time focusing on other aspects, but for the most part, you're seeing the trajectory of these arcs in both the story and character development terms, and the destination, without ever actually knowing what precise that destination is going to be, because they use that subversion of expectation thing, and unlike the most idiots who reach for it and fail epically, they actually know what they're doing with it. They give you false flags, they give you red herrings, they make you think, oh, this is what's going to happen most likely because that's what happens. No, they spin it and they add flavor and they make it feel real. And it's not like the writings on the wall with everything.
Yeah, you can't. When it comes to subversion, you can't do it just to do it.
Yeah,
that's when it's completely pointless. I mean, there's purpose behind that. Yeah,
it's either
shock value for shock value's sake.
And they quite clearly
time.
They quite clearly planned out how like what their story was, and then when you do like the false flags or like the false readings or like this foreshadowing here or whatever, that's all done like from like a post mentality. They know where they're going, and they're not. I wouldn't want people to who haven't seen it to think, oh, it's just subversion for the sake of subversion. It's not and that's not the point of the show. It just does that so well. Like I just because that wasn't the takeaway I had, was like, oh, it's the show where subversion is done right. I mean, I'm sure that there will be many a video essay about that, but I think that's almost a little reductive, because it's so, everything about it is great from like a writing perspective. That's just one other thing that they excel at. You know,
it's for me one of the more impressive aspects. It's not most important, but it's one of the most impressive because it's so poorly done most of the time, and they do it repeatedly, masterfully. And again, it's not just the sake of shock value. It has shock value much of the time, almost by just inherent value that never happens anywhere else. But it's never the point they're going for. It's either they're trying to establish a theme of going back to the weight thing of that. For like consequences, they're trying to establish the idea of struggling and striving as hard as you can doesn't always work. Going for the idea of strength of character. You know, they're all being utilized for very specific story-based, character-based reasons. They're not just, oh, we need to put some shock value in, otherwise it's too predictable. You know, that is the most base, pointless.
That's what I mean.
They just do not touch.
I would say that most stories that are told at the level that this one is, subversion is just part and parcel to the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's like this is excellent writing is basically the point. You know, like there's only one area where I think it kind of fell down a little bit. I think because we're talking about this, the way that we're talking about this, we should probably just move into a discussion of the characters take us through the rest of this. Okay. Yeah. So
starting with Vi, I guess, because she's the main, if there can be considered one ensemble like this.
God.
Just general thoughts on the character? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I guess we've start with Fran a bit. So Fran, why don't you start up that bit? Get us into
it. Vi, I think, is one of the most interesting characters. There's obviously, but they're all interesting to an extent, but she is the one that drew me in the most. Obviously, with her being sort of the main feature, like her being like the largest image on like the posters and stuff like that. But her story of I can't remember where I saw it, but there was a discussion going on about the fact that Vi is someone who, when she was younger, 100% wore her heart on her sleeve, even though she was bullheaded and she did make stupid decisions, as like Vander, the father figure in her life, talks to her about. She is the person that people look to. Where she goes, they will follow. And that is a lot of responsibility that her as a kid has. So the heart on the sleeve situation sort of follows that. But with everything that happens in her mind, kind of betraying like Powder Jinx sort of character and losing her and failing her in that way, there is a scene later on in the Act 2 section where Caitlyn says to Vi, you have a good heart, you know, and like the absolute kind of sort of shock on her face of hearing that is something to me that shows a lot about her character. She fully believes that she no longer has any goodness in her because all the things that she did, abandoning Powder in her mind and all these sort of things, that she doesn't think she has a heart anymore. She doesn't think she has these deep feelings and these connections because she's been so downtrodden that there's literally nothing else that she can do except for fight back. But Caitlyn is opening this door for her to see something different in herself and this opportunity to change. And there's just so much growth that comes with that, with her as a character, that just really just the emotional depth of her character as well, of just like, she's someone who hasn't seen a lot of happiness in her life, and she's slowly recognizing that she deserves to find happiness in her life, even at the expense of people who don't bring happiness into her life. In the case of the finale, of realizing, you know, Powder isn't really there anymore, and the heartbreak that comes with that, the recognition that she's kind of lost her anyway. There isn't a way to kind of fix this situation the way that she wants it to be. And probably, as we'll maybe see in season 2, the growing from that may come with that situation. I don't know if I made any sense there whatsoever, but just
I think the main thing as well is that all of you, what you've just said there, completely right. And the best thing about it for me is that it's not just a focus of, that's not just an analysis of her as a character. That's very much true of the entire story, because she's kind of the more central of the mains. Every bit of her growth, development, every part, she's kind of, every time you see her kind of try and work through the tragedy she's faced, relearn the lesson she already knows, because she is someone who is a natural leader. She understands and appreciates all the qualities she needs to reach out and regain. It's just she's struggling to do that based on her own, beautifully done, based on the fact that she knows that, and that's what's caused her to have the current trauma, because she knows that she failed. And also failed beautifully and understandably. It wasn't like it's she needs to fail to get to this point because she's screwed up completely justifiably or understandably,
yes.
Right?
But not.
Can I just
not
sorry,
morally, which breaks her, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I just? Oh, sorry, Evan. Can I just say one thing and then I'll
Yeah, go ahead.
There was just one thing I want to say. For all the people who talk about how Vi is a bad person because she smacked Powder and abandoned her, did you not watch her be kidnapped? Did you not see her being kidnapped?
Yeah, she
Come on
She
now.
snapped out of it and went straight back, but couldn't. That's the tragedy of it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that anyone who's saying that, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say that these are young people who probably don't know very much about anything, and if they're beyond like age 16, write them off. Like their opinions don't matter because like they don't get it. That would be my take on that. But I was just gonna bring up the same thing as like I like what you're saying about her, but I love that the show didn't portray her as like an asshole. Like somebody who's like just totally like numbed or whatever, like it, or completely like nothing matters, totally amoral or immoral or like whatever. She never went off the deep end. Okay, like she failed and like she's got stuff to work on. But she's never like an asshole person. Like and she feels still human, like even when she's in prison. You know what I mean? And like, immediately as she gets out, what's she doing? She's doing human things. I got to go eat, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's like things like that. She just feels, and she's happy to see the guy serving her the food. It's this is as good as I remember. Or you want some? Or she's like making jokes or whatever. She still feels. She's like a well done roguish kind of character, but in like the main kind of like badass. And she's got baggage, but it's not like this crippling thing that just informs every scene with her, because people are nuanced and more varied than that. So it was, I loved her as a main character. She was great. She's probably the one I like the most, with the possible exception of Victor. But she's like those are my two favorite characters for sure, followed closely by Caitlyn. But anyway,
you can jump in
who's
on
next?
something there, Evan.
Oh no, I was actually similar to what Matt was saying. She definitely felt extremely human to me, mainly because like she was saying, she's able to adapt herself to various different emotional and physical environments like a realistic person. Like one mistake that a lot of like more drama centric series will do is like they'll have a character either wallow on like one sort of emotional state due to a tragedy, or doesn't really, kind of keeps the same face for every person they interact with. But what I really liked with everyone, Vi especially, was the fact that she's able to just like that. Like she's not just one note. She acts differently around the people, who she's interacting with, whether it be Jinx or Vander or anyone like that. And I really appreciated that because it made her feel more, well, again, I keep saying this, it made her feel more realistic, but at the same time, it really kind of informed her. It really also kind of informed her ability to adapt. And that's kind of a big theme with her, especially, is survival, because she has been on the run her entire life and just going day to day trying to make it to the next, and that really came through not just in her dialogue but in her actions. So I really appreciate that.
Her entire kind of arc and journey throughout the story is that idea that she's a survivor, but she's not just one of the survivors down the pit. She is also just inherently, as a result of who she is, a leader. And it's the fact that she's fallen from that pedestal that she feels that she needs to be on. It's like that cycle. She can't. I've fallen and I've lost it now. I've failed. That's the end. But when really she needs to learn that she's not fallen. She's still the same person. She needs to work herself back up so that she can be that for herself, but also for the people around her who she feels and does have a responsibility for. That's part of who she is. Some people have that weight, and she's one of those. And all of the times you see those rough edges and I hate the term, but edginess of her character and going to the angsty areas. It's when she's responding to characters where she sees things, like sees parts of herself she doesn't like. She sees failures that she's had in the past. She sees fears about future losses, all of that stuff. It's all raw emotion and worry and concern, all coming from the same core place of strength that she has as a character. And it plays so well because they don't just strike the same note repeatedly. Oh, she's reminded of her tragedy. Oh, she's reminded of tragedy. Oh, no. It goes through and establishes different kind of facets of who she is and how the world is shaped. It has shaped and is continuing to shape her. It's beautifully executed all the way through for me.
Oh, yeah. I was like, the one scene that popped into my mind when you talked about when a scene kind of shows her experiences with how she's dealing with it is that scene where Jace has just killed a kid.
Yeah.
And he's literally torn up about it. And her whole thing is like, this is not the first dead child she has seen. And her reaction to him of like his sudden I know, basically, like the presentation in what my mind would be like that whole white guilt situation of like realizing, oh my God, people really go through terrible things. This is awful. It's like, yeah, you've just never seen it. And now you're kind of backing away, which is basically sort of what Jace does in this situation. He backs away.
Just worth noting, he's also not white, which kind of undercuts.
Oh no, sorry, it was just more the sort of term.
It was a real world allegory. Yeah. Just for the people watching this,
it undercuts the use of that.
I think we all understood it, but just making sure.
I couldn't think of another phrase for it. Which
it's fine. No, I get it. It makes total sense.
Yeah, it did. I just want to say that's why that phrase isn't particularly useful in modern usage, but yeah, it's fine. But yeah, you're right though. It establishes that kind of privileged.
That's the word that I was actually looking for. I could not think of that word.
He's coming from that place of privilege and doesn't understand, or does, but hasn't been immediately exposed to personally this kind of tragedy. And I was well, that's it. I can't go on anymore. And it's part of the Vi's leadership and responsibility that she's someone who has. You know, it's he has that as well in a different arena, but in her world, which is where they are in that moment, he has a lot of work to do. You know.
Yeah.
And that's just it, because the dynamic between Piltover and the Undercity really is the crux of the entire series. You know, just that playing with that perspective and the fact that they cut back and forth, and it's just such a stark difference.
And not being too heavy-handed about it as well.
Yeah,
you know, like it's like these are people who just live in different worlds. Mm-hmm. It's not really like everyone in this world sucks and everyone down there, you know, is downtrodden or whatever. It's like life is kind of what you make of it in either area, or in either arena or realm. You know what I mean? It's just showing that again the depth of character. But we can talk more about him in a minute. I want just sticking on I'm ready to move off of Vi, but that whole kind of Undercity. Is that what it's called? Undercity.
We'll go on to Powder and Jinx next, I guess. Most prevalent, well-known.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, before her, I'd like to talk about Vander, just because he's not around for as long, you know, and he's like informed the whole thing. That's what I loved about how. His presence was great, because Vi wouldn't have worked as well to me if they were like orphans and she was just that way. You can see the model, like what she's modeled herself after, who she's learned from, you know, how she's come to be the way she is. You see all that, even though you get things like flashbacks and stuff to show you like the progression, you almost don't need them. You get it just from like the characters' interactions, and he was a great just a presence. I really enjoyed him as a character. And I said this to Callan back when I was first watching this. This is like a weird thing, but I enjoyed the fact that he smoked, because so many times in Hollywood, they'll just do these stupid cheap tricks to show that somebody on camera is like an asshole. And I've literally seen multiple scenes in movies in like the last 10 years where somebody, if you want to show this person's an asshole, have them smoke, have them like making rude jokes, and have them take a piss all at the same time. You know, it's just it's just like all these stupid things. This, I was like, okay, he's well-rounded, he's a good person, and he's got a vice, and he runs a bar. You know, people have vices. It feels believable, you know, and especially if you're living in a circumstance like that. So also smoking was like a huge thing in this show. Almost everyone did it, and it was often used as like for cinematic purposes, like accepting a light from somebody as being like agreeance or ostensibly to what they're talking about when they're saying it to you. So it's like well done usage of props and like the setting and everything. You know, that if you think of it as like a theatrical production, they're doing all the same tricks. That's why I said it's so cinematic. But yeah, Vander, he was a character I really enjoyed. And I don't know if there's too much to say about him. Anybody got stuff they want to talk about?
I mean, I love how they.
Sorry, you go.
Oh, nothing. I was just going to say, I really love how they established his presence and just the influence he has on the Undercity. Just it was like subtle, but also not, because like there's this one scene where some enforcers come into his bar and they try to like square up to him, and everybody in the bar like stops what they're doing, stands up, and like gazes at the enforcers, and he literally says, "Yeah, don't insult the guy, you know, pouring drinks." And I love that, because it just
that kind of thing
that immediately shows right there just the sway he has just within the community. Like, this is a person who is respected, who's in his own right extremely powerful, and is capable of actually, you know, standing up for himself and has the backing to do it. So that, again, just that one scene right there, I love how they portray that.
Point.
Yeah.
Sorry, on that point, that kind of thing was done excellently with multiple characters throughout the entire thing.
The efficiency of their introductions and like immediate establishments. They didn't waste time going, this is this character. No, it just straight into it. You know who that character is.
But also, but just the establishment and follow through even of the power dynamic in play. It's happened multiple times, and it was that kind of thing without a word being said. You understand, okay, this guy's like the leader here, right? Or he's respected. There's a scene later on where Silco does the same thing, where like when the quote being like loyalty or something, it's still important to him, and it makes it seem like somebody's about to get killed, but it doesn't happen because or like he's about to get killed by his what's her name, his kind of minion or right hand lady,
Zavika.
Zavika. Okay. When it seems like she's gonna betray him, but she doesn't, like, and he knows she's not going to. It's like it's that perfect. Again, the follow through the power dynamic, and also a more subtle one, but Mel's mother, like ultra badass warrior woman,
like stolen from your own writing.
I literally wrote that character. Like they owe me some money, but anyway, there's a scene where I think Mel comes in and is like shouting at her while she's getting like a massage or something, and like the little servant guy, like Mel's like, she dismisses him. She's like, get out of here, I gotta talk to her. And he does not leave.
Yeah.
He doesn't leave until she goes, you can go. Yeah, it's like, it's perfect. It's like little subtle things like that, where you understand who's in charge in this room every single time. It's perfect.
And the attention to detail on every facet of that, just all throughout every single character, like with zero exception, they are aware, and if they don't do it, it's intentional. They're aware of, okay, we need to establish this subtle undertone for this scene, and it could be like 100th of the importance of the scene, and they'll still pay attention to it all throughout, consistently, and with no dips in the series, and that is so goddamn rare. But with Vander in particular, Evan, your point about how he has a sway of the community, the fact that it was so early established was excellent by itself, but also I liked how it immediately played into his influence over the main cast as well. He is the linchpin of the initial establishment for Vi and Powder as well, but mostly Vi, and the struggle they're going to be going through. They're not, as Matt mentioned before, with the experience of the character, they're not fridging any of these characters. They're not just killing them off to make use of their tragedy for the main character. They respect them as individuals and members of the story, and properly develop and work with them and get you attached, not just for the sake of, haha, we killed them, now it's going to hurt more, but because they deserve that as well-written characters, a service to the story. It's not just a case of, even though you know they're going to die. At least he is. Vander was dead the second he walked onto screen, basically, because he's that mental character. It's the unwritten rule.
I will say that I expected it to happen like later, than it did. But because you're right. It's telegraphed that he's going to die, but I didn't think it was going to be part of the first arc. I didn't understand even that because I watched this after they had already aired. You know what I mean? I guess I should have said that. I didn't watch it because they released it in like sort of staged release with 3 at a time, I think. Right? At different parts of the month. And so, I'm going, okay, there's 9 episodes here. He's the mentor figure. He's probably going to die. But like in episode 9 or episode 8, maybe, or something, I didn't expect it to happen the way it did or when it did. But anyway, back to your point. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was it. That was just the fact that they spent the time on it and made sure they developed those characters. The side siblings as well. Obviously, I forget the names, which is not good of me. But they're the same.
Clogger and Milo.
Thank you. They have the same treatment. Obviously to a lesser degree because they're not as present. But in the overall community and everything. But they have that. They don't just brush them away. Ekko as well is a prime example. Even though he obviously doesn't come back too much later, he gets the same treatment. To the point where you almost think he might actually end up being an main ensemble character until he gets kind of that drop off happens after episode 3 because of his presence, because of the details they have for each person in the scene. It's just really well done. So moving on, I guess, to Powder, to herself, or themselves, if you want to count Jinx as a separate mentality.
I love that you immediately.
Sorry, go.
No, I'm just gonna say. Go ahead. I love how you immediately. Well, the fact that her duality is something that they establish again pretty immediately with the series. The fact that she means so well, but the fact that she just isn't as experienced as the rest, and how that just keeps tripping up, getting her into trouble. And the fact that she is again like a real person her age, like she's she wants to help in the best way she can, but at the same time, it just shows the fact that it's not that she isn't capable, because she actually is a very capable person in her own right, even in the first few episodes, and she definitely gets more capable later on. But again, what I really enjoyed the fact is that they show immediately that she's, how do I explain this? I guess you could say meaning well, but it shows how you can make a character both sympathetic and unsympathetic at the same time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm not sure the word for it, but yeah, just that.
Yeah, I'm struggling too. Yeah.
Well, the reason why what I think part of it is that most of the time when you establish a character like that, it's almost always, okay, you're not the problem. The world is the problem, and the world doesn't accept you, blah, blah, blah. She really is kind of a Jinx. You know what I mean? It's like it's like certain things would not happen if she hadn't done what she did. Again, well-intentioned, but it's... I think it's the bravery to tell a story, or to make the choice to tell a story where that character who's kicked around kind of actually does do something harmful that really messes everybody else up, and then she then has to deal with, albeit poorly, she deals with this with like the guilt of that. You know what I mean? It's rare that you see like it's her fault in a vacuum anyway, but she plays a part in it, right? And you almost never see that story being told. It's almost always just very simple. Like, you're fine. It's the world that needs to change. In this, it's like, that's part of the mentality there. And surely that's a part of the equation, but it's not the only factor. You know, it's like, it's such an unusual choice, because I think it's almost uncomfortable, you know, to deal with that, as
one of those cases where you can see the cracks, like, immediately before any of the outside, before all of the outside stuff relating to the plot comes into play.
And when they don't take her, and when they deliberately leave her behind, and she has that moment in her room where she's like really like, I mean, she's like drooling, and she's like, and she's like I'm going, what is this? Because I wasn't familiar with the character at all, and I'm like, that was the one bit where I was like, what's going on now? This seems like quite an extreme reaction, but I didn't understand what they were like sort of teeing her up for. Was the fact that she's about to have like a full-on psychotic break.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
with that point. Sorry, one thing. With that point specifically, I like the fact that they're focusing on her. It's not her struggle that makes her character, because, like you said, that is external. That's world based. It's not ultimately her fault that she causes the incident. Well, again, it's her fault, but it's not intentional. So it's like outside circumstances happening to screw people over, and therefore very much her. But that's not the point of her character. That's not the tragedy and the flaw of her character. The flaw is how she reacts to that. It's understandable that she gets crippled and broken by her guilt, but ultimately, what does lead her down to the path where she is an antagonist and she is one of the small villains of the piece, is that she makes the continuous choices to just reel with that and not hanging strong and grow through it and push past the guilt and turn herself into something good. She just kind of gives up after a point. I like that's the focus of her arc. She's not just slipping down because everything keeps going wrong. At some point, the external becomes internal, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy with her. Hard to pinpoint when that exact point is in the show. I'd have to look back on the individual scenes, but there is a turning point where things start being her fault actively, and you get why she got to that point. It's not like she's just inherently terrible, but she has started to make choices that will actively impact people, and that is then her fault.
I would have said the bridge scene. I think the bridge scene is that turning point of seeing Vi going back to Caitlyn, and then she sets some order.
Yeah, but I think there are a few instances before that where she's making active choices of just fuck the world. Maybe not the people she loves, but just genuinely not caring. And that's part of her criminal existence anyway, obviously. But just in terms of scenes, we do see her make some active negative choices by her own steam. But you're absolutely right. That is the true turning point. That's where, okay, she's gone now. Like, she's at that point, she's kind of written off as, if she's redeemable, it's going to be with an endless forever remorse. And there's no other way for her.
Yeah. The only thing that I would mention was just like, I slightly disagree with the scene of her, like the hysterical sobbing scene of being left behind as like the lead up to the break in sort of like her psyche, because that's what kids do. Like that was very much like a childlike reaction to me of like, I remember doing the exact same thing of like being, and admittedly I do have like, that's a discussion for a therapist. But like, I do remember scenes of like being left out sort of situation and literally having that hysterical, not being able to like breathe, like the absolute devastation of just being left out of something that is so important, or at least obviously not to the same level of importance in the show.
I understand all the emotion behind it. I would still say that was an extreme reaction. Like, I mean, if you like, to me, the scene stuck out in my mind. Like as I was watching it, was like, okay, like what's going on here? Or like there's more to this than just, okay, I've been left behind. You know, like to me, it seemed like this is the culmination of something, or you know, something else. And I had full confidence that they were going to justify it. I don't have a problem with the scene. It was just something.
No, totally. I think I was just explaining further because we also have that initial part of like she's heard Vi saying that she is useless previously without hearing the follow-up thing of telling Milo to like shut the fuck up.
I hate that, by the way. One of the most infuriating things in writing. I don't think it was misused or anything, but just as a record, for the record, every time you had the misunderstanding from overhearing the entire thing,
but to add to that situation, like that adds more to like that emotional break of like she's heard this of being heard that she is useless, and then at that moment where she's like, you know, I can do this, and Vi basically kind of like shouts her down saying like, no, you can't say yes, her emotional reasoning is final, but like at this point Powder she's just heard how useless she is. She's been told this so consistently, has heard it from the one person it matters, and now has officially been told she's not important enough or useful enough to help. If
she'd just been crying or bawling, I don't think I would have even questioned it. It's the fact that there's laughter involved in it. It's like it's literally there's like mild laughter. It's like something the Joker or Harley Quinn would do, and she turns out to be like a Harley Quinn. You know what I mean?
Just for the note, she is originally a Harley Quinn analog. What League of Legends does and what Dota does, they take characters and stories from other fiction and they put their own spin on it and they insert it into the game. So that's how she was originally made. She's the Harley Quinn take. So
and I had no idea of that before I watched this. So
but you're right though, because I think while everything that follows fits in with that fine, is established by that fine, I agree. There's a slight lack of gradation in introduction to that part of her personality. That is kind of like the first time you see her actively going a little bit insane. And while Fran, you're entirely right, that's a perfectly legitimate response in certain situations. This particular spark for me didn't sync with that reaction. There needs to be a bit more of like a thing that pushed her into that outburst. Or alternatively, I didn't really have time to do this, so I can forgive them. Having a few minor hints of it prior to this to establish that, so it wasn't quite such okay, with this level of crazy, at least in this moment, you know. So I think that was the main thing. It was a bit stark and shocking compared to what we'd seen previously. What came after perfectly makes sense, but just it was one of the less masterful of the entire parts of the story for me. But yeah, nitpicking.
I don't have a problem with it because again, the rest of the story justifies that moment to me. It's like the lantern hung on that. It's just like wham. Lantern, but like but you know, that's where it's going. I go, okay, this has got to go somewhere, and sure enough it does. I didn't realize what her character's trajectory was going to be, but like from that moment I was expecting something, and something happens in the same episode, like more immediately and more extremely than I ever expected. Can we just talk about that moment where everyone says, oh wow, this is like an instant classic, that third episode, right? And not just what happens, but again, the way it happens and just how like sad it is. The fact that they were about to be like, they were like mission accomplished.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they
were literally just about to escape.
It's a suicide mission that they had no business winning. Hey, we're winning. And then our little sister blows it all up. It completely trying to help. And it's the one time her invention works. You know what I mean? And then dealing with that's not the end of the episode. The fact that we deal with the fallout of it immediately, like it's perfect. It's perfect.
And they sit in the moment as well. They don't
the fact that it's a mistake,
move on, and like you say, as they would with a harsh episode cut, they spend the time following on with the immediate aftermath of it. It's not just explosion, tragedy. That's almost beside the point. It's the follow up, the immediate reaction, and that is coming, understandably, to said tragedy. It's like, oh god. And again, built on the fact that they were actively winning. If they had just been like, they might not make it, and this was like, they weren't going to win anyway, they were winning. They were out, and then Jinx literally enters the play. Sorry, Evan, you're going to say something.
No, I'm just going to say, and the fact that all of it was completely unintentional on her part, just the fact that like the realism of that like really does seem like something like I was going to say immature. I'll just say like young-minded person would do, because the fact that she did want to prove herself so much that she did defy their orders and actually did, like, that is something that someone like that would do. And the fact that it really wasn't choreographed at all just really, really drives that impact home.
It's also a smaller example, but something worth noticing. I've said a few times now about dramatic weights in the writing. This is one of the most basic and like shallowest levels of it, but it's so important because they can keep it consistent throughout the story. Is if you cause an explosion, you're going to cause damage. Fire, blades, guns, they're all dangerous. And if you just an anime character can fly through a ball of fire and be completely fine, if you have that, you immediately undercut the tension and impact of any such threat throughout the rest of the narrative. And this doesn't do that. From the very first explosion in the office of Jace's office at the start, it's followed up with, and we didn't see anybody injured at that point, but it's followed up with, it was an explosion. Of course people were hurt. That alone, along with the fight, along with this end tragedy of this climax, it establishes that actions have consequences. And it's not just important for the story, but it's an important lesson for viewers and characters. And the fact that they keep that strong throughout, culminating, of course, with Jace's incident in the and tragedy in the one of the last fight scenes. It just shows you why actions and consequences are so important in both narrative and real world, and I love it for that. And that was the first big example of that having an impact on the actual main cast.
And that's just it. The fact that even though this is a very action-centric series, like, these are still quote unquote low-tier characters. Like, these are just regular people. Like, we do have instances of like people with like superhuman abilities, but like they're like augmented through chemicals. Like that's actually explained, or they're using like really advanced tech. Like without all that. Well, granted, there are a few instances where they display like, this isn't really something a normal person should be able to do.
Well, I just think it's stylistic license at that point. But it is
into that, but it always
like later in the series when Ekko is very clearly dodging gunfire, even though he's literally just a normal human on a surfboard. It's like okay, but I'm not saying that's like it's distracting or anything like that. It just is. It is, the rules of this world are kind of a little bit bendable in terms of combative ability. But I'm not saying that as a flaw. I'm just saying that.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. Like, to me, because I think the point of what you're saying is still shines through, even though there is that slight upscale. Mean, it's of what would happen in real life. I mean, Vi is like ridiculously like strong, for example. You know what I mean? But I mean,
admittedly, in her does make sense. They do kind of show it in story, sort of like what they do with like the basically strengthening up the bones and muscles in her house by punching walls. Basically, like there is like examples of like making sense for how that works sort of situation. So there's like in universe
and if she
logic.
Was a character, in universe it's totally fine. If she was going around in like in a live action, sort of high school age, doing some of the things she does, I'm going, wow, she's like, is she like on steroids or something? But like in this, it totally like flows. I don't even question it. But what were we? Oh yeah, that scene though. The scene where everything goes wrong, right? I love the emotion of it, and I really love that. Again, I guess people will call it like the failure moment for like Vi, but I feel like I've been that person, like just like lashing out at somebody that I'm angry at with good reason or whatever, and to the point where I'm losing the light on what's really going on. I mean, it's like it was such a perfectly done moment, and I don't fully side with either character. My heart's with both of them. You know what I mean? And you almost never see that, like in the writing process. It was so well done. I love that.
And it's the fact that
anyway,
immediately, because I don't particularly emphasize that moment that much personally, because I don't tend to go that way. But what immediately made it work for me is that following up, she goes around that corner, she has a moment of like, oh god, and then instantly it's like, wait, no, what have I done? I didn't mean that. It's such a, because of the fact that her character is based on leadership and strength. She immediately snaps out, and then double layering on the tragedy of and she's grabbed, she's pulled away, and that's the damage of Jinx. Jinx doesn't ever know until much later on. That she was immediately coming back. It's the layers of just gut punches they put
even
into
just
that
the fact that they went as far as having her actually strike her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
I mean,
it's just
a line rarely crossed in this kind of a medium.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
although admittedly
it
was the most realistic thing.
You know what I mean? And like that,
I was going to say, who hasn't in the heat of anger pinched a sibling or slapped a sibling? Like I know for a fact, I remember for a fact that my sister has definitely punched me when we were like 6 and she was 4. So it definitely shouldn't have hurt because she was 4. But like things like that do happen. Like there is heat of the moment, things that happen as kids.
I will say though, if there's anyone on the planet that I would believe hasn't done it, it might be Callan. And then that would be it. Yeah.
Also haven't done that, but I understand that for the most part that's entirely a normal thing. It's your kids, and they are kids, and the fact that they show such a clear difference in characterization as well between and it seems obvious. Of course they've changed when they're grown up, but it really can't be understated in certain works like this. There is a marked difference between the characters once they've been aged up post time jump. You see, I mean, even just we talked about the physicality a second ago, and just touching on that point as well, I think that the only time it dips out of realism is when it's going for stylistic choice. I think that for the most part, with the possible exception of Vi landing from long jumps, it holds consistent. But anyway,
I mean, Ekko dodging bullets. I mean,
well, yeah, stylistic though. That bridge moment is stylization like incarnate. But regardless, anyway, the physicality of Vi, she spends all her time in prison exclusively exercising, from what we see. Brooding and exercising, so it's justifying that, and that's the physical change. But emotionally speaking, there's an immediate jump between the Vi we knew and the Vi we see here. Once Caitlyn is coming back to her and finding her in the prison, you see it immediately with those little cues we were talking about earlier of quiet and subtle establishments as how she's developed and how she's moved on. So that distinction between the child and the adult, I think, is brilliant. And that's all built on this tragedy of this scene. Yeah,
and that I think is also just in general something I love about the show, like more on a wide scale thing, is the demographic that they're writing to. I think is like something called 16 plus, which is to me kind of new, at least in Western animation. That needs to be a thing because like you can have like these younger characters, but the world can't be aged down. You've got to have, the world still needs to be. There are allusions to things like, I mean, there are prostitutes walking around, there's drug use, there's smoking, there's gambling, there's liquor, there's all these things. And then later in the show, we have like a full-on sex scene. Again, it's no full frontal, but it's by no means, there's usually, occasionally they say fuck, like not just shit or whatever, which is already kind of pushing it, but they actually use the word fuck a few times. So it's not, but that's exactly what I want to do in my own writing, by the way, is like have sort of youthful characters, but the world needs to be the world. It's like, I mean, I hope that is above all what this popularizes across media, whether it's animation or not. Like that would be the one thing I want people to take, is you don't need to dumb down your world to write young characters at all. This is great. This is fantastic at that. But anyway,
moving on to the next character, then I guess. Should we move on to Caitlyn? Because she seems like the next logical jump.
Mm-hmm.
She's awesome.
She's we all love Caitlyn.
She's the one, interestingly, who goes through the least change throughout the series. She's very much the character that is being refined by her experiences within the world, but her core character doesn't ultimately need to change too much. She's got to get a bit more experience and blow off a bit of the rust and the naivety. But who she is at the start essentially is who she is at the end, and I like that in parity with Vi. Obviously the partner character in the plot. She represents that kind of, that you can get a good back and forth between the two, and her and Jace as well, based on the important lessons and understandings and experiences that she is bringing to the world, while also having those expectations kind of blown out by reality. She's reminding the characters around her what they should be, while also slightly refining her own self as well. I think it worked well mechanically in the plot, and it's all wrapped up in the lovely dressing of very interesting character. You know, she's got good backstory, good personality,
and also
I mean, just
likable.
because you can see where, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, she's the character to me that, like, the standout thing about her is the one that she doesn't really need to be doing what she's doing. She's made the choice. I mean, she does not need to be doing that job. That's an active choice that her family doesn't even want her to be doing. So, like, you kind of see that, like, prior to us meeting her, she's already made, like, a choice. You know what I mean? Or, like, really meeting her, because she is involved before the time jump, but she's really not a character until after the time jump. I didn't actually expect her to be, like, kind of taking the stage the way that she did, but I'm glad she did, because she's my third favorite character easily. You know, she vies with Vi for second, or Vi or Victor. You know what I mean? But those three are my favorite characters.
And she's an important.
I really appreciate the fact that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
Oh no, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I was just saying, like, I really appreciate the fact that they established that the reason she does what she does. It's not like a pride thing. She's not like, oh, I'm just gonna become an enforcer. I'm gonna show my parents, you know, I can do whatever. No, it's not like that. Like, it's rooted in a genuine desire to help people. And I really appreciate that, because, again, she definitely is, like, the character in this series where you can immediately tell where they're going with her, like, straight off the bat. But it doesn't feel flat. Like, she's still interesting. And the fact, again, like you mentioned, her and Vi have such good chemistry, because, again, like, you would expect this sort of fish out of water, quote unquote, story. Like, you know, that can go wrong horribly. And what's great, too, is, like, even though she is the fish out of water in the Undercity, it doesn't come off as, like, disrespectful, if that makes sense. Like, she's not, like, bumbling around. Well, she is a little at start, but at the same time, it shows that she's incredibly adaptable and capable. And I really appreciate that. Again, it adds that layer of humanity. And what's cool is Vi actually grows to respect her, like, relatively quickly. And I like that. You know, she doesn't have to spend, like, 6 episodes proving herself. Like, no, like, she establishes immediately, hey, I have knowledge, I have capability, I can help you. And Vi appreciates that, and she immediately takes her up on it. And again, that's something that I feel like a lot of shows would probably dwell on a little bit too much. So I really appreciate that they were able to get that rolling in a more realistic fashion.
She's the interesting balancing point between the two worlds. But you expect on surface level and initial establishment of the characters for Jace to be the character that's kind of that one point between the two sides of the city. But at the end, when all things pan out, it's Caitlyn that is that character, and it's by personal choice. She's come from a place of high privilege and can just coast through life and doing whatever she wants. And instead, because she's a good person, regardless of background, which is the most important thing, she is choosing to go into this world and try and make it a better place, regardless of risk to her personal safety. Which, comes with that layer of naivete, but it's not stupidity. She's got to personally learn. She's growing and developing as a person. She's young, and you see understand that.
Yeah,
sorry.
So I was just saying, the fact that she's such a kind person is just so evident in the way in which she interacts with almost every single character that she meets in the Undercity. Like, the scene, I can't remember the character's name, but the character that we see briefly in the first episode, and then he's had Shimmer and he's changed. And the fact, when she hugs him, I burst into tears, because the look on his face, like, he's clearly had no one do that in so long that he is just shocked. It just shows immediately the kind of person she is, immediately after another moment of showing the kind of person she is by giving up her only weapon and a family heirloom. Like, we see in the portrait in her family home that gun she's had since she was a child, and she's given that up basically without really a second thought to save Vi's life, someone she's only known for about a day and a half maybe. And something we consistently see, like, she is someone who is, but she is a hugger, is what I would describe her as, but also just the fan. But everything about it, like, there is a scene on the bridge where Jinx is shooting at her and Vi that immediately captures the kind of person she is, in that she tries to use her body to shield Vi from the bullets.
Yeah, she's a policewoman. You know, she's very much aware of her duty, and that's on top of the kindness as well. You know, it's multifaceted. Yeah. They're paying homage to what she's supposed to be as a character and how she's changing and stuff. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and there's also sorry.
I was just gonna say, she's kind of like introduced as like attached to Jace, and then she, you know, you could say, okay, now she's attached to Vi, but she doesn't feel attached. She feels like her own person. She's not like, this is love interest, here she is, you know, or this is police lady, here she is. It's like she's like her full on own character, like, after a while, and it's justified through all these actions that she's taking that you're talking about, and those are what really scales her up from being kind of like a plot, cast. Like a walking plot device, basically.
She's not
to
a
being
hanger
like an actual character. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she's also not just in service of the plot as well. Even though she's one of the more plot attached characters, there aren't that many just character development scenes, just both her alone, though there are certainly those. She also has a kind of presence within each scene that shapes the end result of the characters involved. She's shaping Vi, she's shaping Jace, she's shaping the politics to a large extent. Her active choices
and Jinx.
And Jinx as well, yeah. Not always in the best way, but that's not her fault.
No.
She's having an effect. She's in the story to serve a character-related purpose, not just a plot purpose, and that's important for someone of her type. Because otherwise, as Evan said, Matt said, fish out of water, kind of that supporting role, it can fall so flat if you don't have that added bit of zest. And she has that plenty. She's a great character to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited for what they're going to do with her in season 2, considering what may possibly be happening at the end of this season, and like her, like we immediately see her emotional reaction to what's going on, because she knows her family is in there. They are like every single person that she loves and cares about is possibly going to be dead. And she's probably going to do a similar thing. That this is where I think this whole interesting part of Vi and Caitlyn is that they are foils to each other in many ways, and I feel like season 2 is going to have a similar situation of, if that is the case, Caitlyn is going to take the blame for what's happened because of what she does in that situation of kind of seemingly pushing Jinx further with the pulling out the gun on her and all these sort of things, even though she does kind of not do it but considers it. I think she's going to do a Vi in that situation and take that blame on herself, and Vi is going to have to be the Caitlyn to her in this situation of finding a way to bring her back to herself, like Caitlyn has done for Vi in this season. And no, it's not because I've read a fan fiction that has done something very similar, but it's something that'd be really interesting to see how they develop each other's characters in these ways, because they've done that so well already in just this one season. I've just loved seeing how it develops between them.
I mean, just how they ended the series in general, I'm excited to see what happens next. They've given us such a great springboard platform for the next season's material. It's not just a cliffhanger ending. It's going to be, there are so many options. You can see the trajectories. It's not just giving you nothing, but there are so many of them. It's like, which one are they going to pick? And because they've built up so much faith with the insane quality of this first season, you're excited to see which one they go for, regardless of the preference. It's exciting.
Let's conclude on that point, like, of the ending. Let's conclude the podcast on that, like, because it was great. But so could we move on to kind of move through these other characters a little bit more quickly?
Jace, then,
he's the one that I don't dislike him at all, but he got progressively kind of like less interesting to me, like from like his starting point. It rather, I liked him and I still like him, but the other characters really like I like Caitlyn, for example, like outpaced him immediately, like where I was like, okay, I'm now watching her and not so much him. you know what I mean? But he basically he was like the first like kind of window into like sort of magic, which I really don't understand, but I also don't feel slighted by what magic is here. I don't feel like I need to know that yet if they haven't told me. So I'm fine, because again, they're doing all the right stuff when they're doing it. But and again, even in his sphere, eventually, as I'm watching it, I get more interested in what Victor and even later Mel are doing. so you know what I mean? So I like him, but I don't have that much to say about him compared to the other ones. What do you guys want to?
I will say I really appreciate.
You go, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I really appreciate the fact that they portray him as like the sort of inventor who, while he is incredibly passionate about his work and it is rooted in a genuine desire to help people, through his tech, I like that they established also pretty quickly that he, even though his ceiling is not as, is a little bit different from some of his peers, he does reach a point where he is genuinely willing to destroy everything he's done in order to serve the greater good for the people around him. And I really appreciate that, because he doesn't really come off as one of those like quote unquote mad scientists who like, puts, so much effort into their work, damn the rest of the world and everything like that. And again, I really appreciate that, because and especially with his dynamic with Victor, because again, it's like he is very driven and very determined. He still has a moral compass that is ultimately rooted with a desire to keep the people safe. So I really appreciate that.
He respects the code of Piltover, and it's been built from that foundation. And I think that's one of my favorite things about him. But I'm also in the same mind of Matt in how he's one of the less interesting characters for me. I think it's mostly down to the fact that he's a bit simpler than the others in terms of what his character journey is. He's with possible exception of Caitlyn, even though she's more plot relevant to the more interesting arc characters. So that's probably the thing that saved her. But he is so sure and then so unsure. On in various different sections that he's more static than the rest, while and also most malleable and most fluctuating political situations. So you don't see too much of a. Everything is he has a lot of rehashing with him. It's a reestablishment for every kind of thing with stuff.
More than any other character, he is sort of like the one that we get exposition about the world for, or through his POV. Mm-hmm. Like everybody else is like a character with a character-driven story. He's still got one. I don't mean to say that he's poorly done, but he's more setting-based than the other ones are, and that's the politics especially. Like there's a lot to talk about that the show has to talk about through his POV. Through the characters around him are the ones doing it. So he's less. He's a little bit more of a passive character than our other ones.
He's more of a world building piece.
Yeah.
He's like a lawful neutral. That's what I think of him as. And the cinnamon roll, who's a bit dumb. He's like a himbo character. I think he feels like a himbo character, which I do appreciate. I think he's an interesting character, mainly due to his relationship with Victor. And just like some of the things that he does, like he's a bit misguided, but he kind of gets there in the end a little bit. Can
I out myself as somebody who doesn't understand some internet speak? What is cinnamon roll and what is himbo?
Someone is basically just someone who's just really sweet, but kind of a little bit dumb with some of their decisions here and there.
Gotcha. All right.
He's well-meaning.
Himbo?
It's just male bimbo. I'm pretty sure.
It's
which I think is a bit harsh for him personally. No,
it's more as in it's kind of changed more. It's basically similar to cinnamon rolls and really sweet and makes some dumb decisions, a little bit dumb, sort of like bowling character, but not as bad as not as stupid in some cases with bowling. So it's not as much as a himbo character, but it's like a cinnamon roll himbo in a sense. I think it's the way I've heard him described.
He's got the intelligence and he makes great decisions. It's just he's in such a situation where everything he does is so high stakes and so morally grey a lot of the time that it's like, he makes the plot related story decisions he makes are interesting and valid, but it's just because of the way he has to go on each decision, it ends up being almost the more boring approach for his character. Again, it's not a criticism. It really isn't. It's by design and it's the right choice. But I think as a result, he comes a little bit more. He reads a little bit more grey in like character flavor than some of the other characters.
Can I say I would watch a show that was just about him, but the fact that he's with all these other characters, he's like, I mean, they're just so
that's
up
what
here.
I mean.
You know what I mean? That's all. Like he's not a bad character at all.
Exactly.
But,
it's just he's being outshone by everybody. So it's
It's like Mel, for example. Like Mel stands out a lot more as a character, which is where like the discussion of like the cinnamon roll himbo possibilities that like it's very clear from the initial interactions that go a little bit deeper that she is kind of playing him a little bit and then isn't as much later on. But the initial thing, and the fact that he doesn't pick up on it is where you go, that's kind of the himbo situation. How could you not pick up on that?
Can we jump onto her? Because she was someone who came in and the whole thing for the first few scenes was just, she's going to be the whispering in your ear manipulator. I was like, oh God. And then like 3 or 4 seasons after that, they're established, she's also her own realistic person who actually cares about people and has real motivations. Like, thank God.
Yeah, that's what I've stopped.
Learning expectations, but doing it properly.
Exactly.
I've stopped saying that. Yeah, I've stopped saying that about it because Silco has depth and humanity to him. Mel, Victor, they all start off with, this is the evil one, right? Well, no, nobody's fully like evil. You know what I mean? They've all got something going on. It's like, especially Victor, who's like, I'm the dean's assistant, and what are you doing in here? Let's or whatever. And I'm like, he's like going to be an evil asshole, and then he's got such a heart to him. You know what I mean? And so
and it's
Mel,
because of the accent.
yeah.
Like 100% it is just because of the accent.
German scientist is inherently bred into our culture to not instinctively give good vibes. But I love that they didn't write that and they actually made him a real person. It was beautiful. We'll get on to him in a second. He's my favorite character. But Mel, the thing that got out with me about her was that she's raw ambition, which always ends badly. Except in this story, they actually took the time to show that just because she's got that raw ambition and wants to climb and wants the power, she also accepts that comes with responsibility and comes with a duty that she actively is aware of. Not just because she's also a good person, guys, but because she has experiences in this field. Like they took the time to show all of this. It's like, thank you.
Experiences
that really plays into her interactions with her mother, because both of them are actually very similarly driven in that way, but they go about it like completely differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, like she's I guess you could say Mel, like she's not as ruthless. Well, she's ruthless, but in a different way. You know, she's not
ruthless in the non-physical harm.
Ruthless, yeah, exactly. Ruthless in intent.
I'm not like in comparison to her mother.
Yeah. She will go for the jugular, but she won't physically go for the jugular. She'll just politically get you. You know, she's got a line that she doesn't cross, which is her mother, which her mother also has presumably, but it's a different line coming from different culture, different backgrounds. You know, they take the time to show you this, and the mother thing is a blip in reality to the overall plot, and it's still they spent all this time on it. It's so well done, and I can't wait to see where it goes for the next season.
Well, but what the mother is concerned about, because she's talking about this background threat, so that's going to be a thing. You know what I mean? So that is a woman who's not going to like make a journey like this unless like shit is about to get real. You know, I mean, she wouldn't waste the time. You know, like she just has that presence where she's like, I don't lift a finger if I don't have to. You know what I mean? And it's like, I've journeyed over here to have this conversation with you. Something bad is about to happen. You know what I mean? So people should be paying more attention to that than they are at the moment.
I can't wait to see what they do with Demacia and Noxus, because those are kind of the polar opposite good, evil cities. Piltover is one of the very much grey area, neutral kind of nuanced style. So what they do with this level of writing quality, with the more bright and shiny and dark and dirty, evil, good places, I can't wait. It's going to be fascinating. To see how they play with that. And
Mel, I just want to say, it has one of my favorite character designs in the show too. I love the she, because they don't do anything too outlandish, but she's so striking. I think it's like the color of like her eyes and like the way that she's always wearing like stark white on like her dark skin and everything. And she just has this sort of
poise,
regal quality, you know, but at the same time, it's not like outlandish fantasy. No one would ever dress that way. What are you doing? Kind of way. It's very sleek and just stylish. I love her character design.
No Padme vibes.
No, exactly. Yeah.
No.
Padme done well. No garishness, no in your faceness. She's just presenting herself. She's there. She's, you know, in the room. You can tell, but she's not trying to like stick herself out in an unpleasant way, which fits the character. You know, that's going back to the whole conscious production value decision making stuff. Character designs is just as much part of that as anything else. They've really spent the time on every facet of detail in the story. But do you want to move on to favorite character for me, Victor?
Victor's awesome. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah, really brilliant. And there's not too much you can say about it beyond that. He's got a very plain arc. Like you don't expect it to go the way it goes as it goes through, but in terms of talking about it after the fact, it's very much a simple story because he is a side character. You know, he's not one of the mains. But I love every facet of it. He's good. He's inherently good, and he cares, but also he has flaws. It's very rare for that to be done.
Well, he's very similar to Jace in the fact that he is incredibly driven, but not at the expense of his morals, and which is why they get along so well, because again, it's rooted in a general honesty, not just self-fulfillment.
And he anchors Jace down while also making the same mistakes later on himself. You know, they need each other to be that reminder and that anchor, because he's reaching the point of desperation, understandably, and still, despite that, once the push comes to shove and he actually faces the horror of what he's doing, potentially what he's going to cause, he backs off. He's like, no, I can't do this, but you, please get rid of this. It's your duty, do it. And he's like, okay. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Like outside of the Vi and Powder or Jinx kind of dynamic, I mean, I think that his character has like the most heart in the show. You know, I mean, it's I did not expect when he first showed up, I did not expect to be seeing flashbacks of him as a child. I did not expect to be caring about what he was doing. Like in any single scene, I just I didn't expect him to get the lab assistant, whose name I don't remember, killed with his experiment. and those things are like very like they're heartbreaking, or even before like when he's making good progress and he's like learning to run for the first time, just things like that. You know what I mean? It's like he's just a great character. I couldn't do much more than just like gush about like how much I love the character. It's like there's not a lot of analysis because again
it's so simple with his stuff. It's nuanced stuff, but it's all stuff we've said before. Every good thing we've said about every other character applies to Victor, and I just vibe with him in particular. He's fascinating. But what we can do though is talk more about the antagonists. Oh no, actually, before we move away from Piltover. You share the same critique of the show as me, Matt, didn't you? When it comes to Heimerdinger.
Professor Heimerdinger. Yeah. Okay. So can we talk about, I mean, he's the one character I don't dislike him. I do not. Like I don't think he's a bad character, right? But he is more than a little distracting to me. And part of it is because he's the only character in this whole thing that you could pluck out him out of this. You could drop him into any rated G Disney movie with changing nothing. Like you don't need to change a single thing about him. There's not. He feels. It's not, and I don't have a problem with the fact that he is kid friendly and kind of just wholesome or whatever. But he's remarkably. He just seems a little stripped down to me, and he's also,
he doesn't have that.
There's no edge to him.
The world edge. How can he exist? He's implausible in this setting, especially considering he's running the city that is in steadily decline. He's
built up as though he's like the Yoda or something. He's been around for like hundreds of years, and he's wise and whatever. And people should, but he has authority in the sense that he's like on the council and he's in charge of the university or whatever. But nobody listens to him. They're flouting what he's saying all the time. Like he of power or you know what I mean, like real gravity about him. And also he probably is right about everything he's saying, right? Like, we shouldn't be messing with this stuff, but he's probably right about all that.
Wrong.
But yeah, so it's like I want to be on his side
with the flashbacks we see.
Yeah. I want to be on his side. I just feel like his case he could be making in a stronger way. He could be illustrating it better. It's like I just don't quite vibe with the character. And he's also a little bit one note. Like for the first several of his appearances, he's like, "Oh, I'm a scientist and I love safety. If you were a scientist, you'd know safety is of prime importance. Safety is everything." Like it's just okay.
Matt's not really exaggerating with that voice impression, by the way.
Yeah, I know. It's basically
it's like he to me. He never quite arrived. However, I will say that I like the pairing of him with Ekko a lot, and I like him being down there a lot, like in dealing with a world where there is more harsh reality to deal with. So where he's like been left, I'm excited to see that go forward. It's just in this season, he wasn't that much of a letdown because I didn't really care about him that much. But he was by far the least plausible character, I think you used that word, plausible. I didn't quite believe him, and although I don't dislike him, I'm not really, you know what I mean? I'm not moved by him yet.
And even in the point where he got more interesting to me as well, when he's going through, even that was just, I'm going to take a stroll through the bad city. Well, this sucks. I'm going to leave the bad city. He doesn't do anything. He just kind of walks in and leaves and stumbles upon Ekko as he's leaving. He's already made the choice. Well, there's nothing I can do here. And it's like, what do you mean? You've not even tried. You've been there for a day. They didn't spend as much time on him, obviously by design. They haven't got infinite amounts of time on him in that sphere to kind of save the level of implausibility and simplicity they had with him for the earliest part of the stage. But like you say, I am excited to see where he goes next time, and particularly because he, as a result of not being there, didn't die with the rest of the council, or at least most of them. So having learned these lessons, having Ekko as a little bit of a lens on the problems of his city that he really should have been aware of, especially considering the fact that everyone's talking about them and he can literally look out his window at the problem.
And he's been around for like 300 years? I mean...
600, I think it is.
It's just...
600?
It's just, what is this guy?
Yeah, because he's older than Piltover. Like Piltover has been around for 500 years, and he's been around 600, so he's been around longer.
He helped found it, so
yeah, I knew it was hundreds of years, but I'll take 100 years. You know what I mean? It's like he should be more than he is to me. But he's one of the very few
aware.
Yeah, it's the lack of awareness, and then he's super clever and super wise in all these aspects, and then he's just got this massive blind sight that just does not fit. It can't work that way. It doesn't make any sense. Not without him being more reclusive than he is. He's not. So
to finish up, that was Heimerdinger, right? So we had our thoughts on him. My other one complaint for the whole show really is Marcus, who was kind of like a POV character. He was like the sort of the corrupt-ish police guy, right? He had a story, and I felt it ended before he did anything incredibly interesting. So I didn't feel like it was just like the worst writing ever. I wasn't like dismayed or, oh, this is terrible. But I was a little bit like, huh, okay. Well, I thought that was going to go somewhere else than it did. Especially after they introduced that he had a daughter, that Silco was kind of like threatening. Like, I was like, okay, he's going to play some kind of role. And then he just kind of died.
Yeah,
so
we never did learn what happened to his daughter, did we?
No, he was the one whose journey as a character was just cut off before the end. And if that was by design, I like the idea, but I think the execution was a bit flat. It didn't get across that if that was the intention, because like I say, we saw that there was a direction he was going, as there was a direction for the story. You could see the possibilities for how he was going to turn out, and then he just kind of dies as an offhand thing in service to the story, and not even that great of one. He was the definition of fridged. And it's just not, it wasn't effective. And especially, again, going back to what we said about Heimerdinger, in contrast to the rest of the show, it was very stark, and it was the main critique I had as well, alongside Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger and Marcus were the two biggest flaws of the show for me. Bar none.
The only thing I would counteract for Marcus is that it feels like it was a direct consequence, because he was starting to do exactly what Silco wanted. Like, he was going to kill Caitlyn because of what Silco had, he threatened his daughter very recently, so he was doing exactly what Silco wanted. And that was the consequence in the end, was like he'd pushed himself too far, but kind of seemingly wasn't going to do it, and then things just caught up with him, and things just kind of insanely got out of hand, and the consequences of literally going down that path literally, like, he destroyed Jinx's life in a sense, like he's helped cause Jinx. And all these sort of things. So all these things, and the fact that Jinx is in a sense his comeuppance when he helped create her, I thought was like a really sort of poetic sort of situation of like, he's fallen down that wrong path. He was going to make it even worse by possibly killing Caitlyn, and then Jinx, the person he helped create by kidnapping Vi, is the one who is his undoing.
I think the strands are there. Like, everything you're saying there is right on paper. It didn't land for me in the actual moment. It felt like it didn't sit in that and properly just go with that story for me. He was an aside focus while the rest of the characters were taking center stage. I think that was a disservice to his character, personally, given how much time.
The only scene with him, the only scene for me with him that really had any sort of impact on me was the grenade scene. The fact that Silco calls him over, hands him a grenade. It actually gives him the opportunity to kill him. And there's actually the sequence where you actually see him do it, and then it reveals it was just in his head. I actually thought that was kind of interesting, because you actually felt like for a fraction of a second there, he actually did consider it. And I thought that I actually thought that was going somewhere. I thought they were going to do a thing like, oh, maybe he does betray him in the end. But then, yeah, you're right. He just kind of died abruptly, which, kind of was strange. It was just strange for them to have that set up to not really go anywhere with it.
Yeah, he's a character who's not evil. He's just weak. He doesn't quite... Yeah. He's not got the strength that he needs to be the kind of people that these other characters around him are. His previous mentor, captain before him, Vi, these other actual leaders, you can clearly see he kind of wants to be that. He's just... He's weak, doesn't know how to get to that point, put himself on this dark path to begin with, and can't get off it. He's on the leash that he can't shake, So he's supposed to be a tragic character, and he does ultimately end tragically, but I just didn't feel it. Given how much oomph they put behind every other moment of this level of consequence in the story, his just felt very much like it fell by the wayside. Which, again, understandable given the time, but it is a flaw. It is, especially in contrast to everything else in the show. But after him,
sorry, motorcycles going by.
That's all right. After him, I believe it was Ekko we wanted to mention. We haven't got too much to say on him, but where he ended up with Ekko, with Heimerdinger at the end, I think that was a good reintroduction for him. His whole little side thing going on, I think, is a good light that gets shone on that side of the city, because we don't see the positive kind of self-built lifestyle on the other side of the city. You know, we don't see the positives there that they're trying to make work, and that's a good idea of, you know, this industrious, self-made. This is what the city could be if the people inside were allowed to thrive. You know, I thought that was a cool little micro, especially introducing Heimerdinger to that.
I feel like he's definitely going to have a major part to play in the next season, because I feel there is quite a bit of setup for that. And I'm actually very curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, certainly a greater part than he's had, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I was going to say, the one thing that I have to say about Ekko is that I like that he is, in a sense of his name, like he is a somewhat beginning echo of Vi when she was younger, like the think with your fists first, like kind of see people for who they are, and just like in this very black and white image of like, he only sees Jinx now. We're in their fight on the bridge when he's beating her. There is this moment where he looks at her and he sees powder and he understands what Vi has been seeing. And I just like that there is that sort of like that reflection between those two characters, and that there is still similarities going on with them. And the fact that he did look up to Vi as well, similar with Powder Jinx. I don't know, I just really liked that about him. And I'm intrigued to see how that's going to go, because he's had this moment of seeing Powder, but now Vi is the one who has seen Jinx as just Jinx and no longer Powder. So how there's going to be sort of an inverse there in season 2, maybe.
Yeah, agreed. And the fact that he pays the price for it as well. He's like, oh, it's Powder.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's them playing with that whole, you know, tragedy and consequence thing again. They don't ever let up on that. But yeah, that's Ekko. I think mostly he's just kind of that side character with great moments of stuff, but mostly he'll come into it next season.
I really liked him, actually. Like, I think more than you guys did. But yeah, I did. And I think that scene was probably the single most stylish, like the coolest use of music, and the fact that they told a past story in the present of what was going on. Like he's done this with her before as a game, you know, and so that is probably my favorite fight in the fact that it's like introduced or interrupted with the flashing back and forward and like the different ways of animation and all that, and the actual song. But then after that, cut back, song's over. You get to see what he actually did, like all in one go. Yeah. It's like it's the best of both worlds when you're going to do something like that.
Exactly.
I like fights that are short and fast, where everything is like purposeful, and that was probably the best fight for me in the whole thing. And I also I like him as a character. He's not like one of my top favorites or anything, but I definitely enjoy his presence. He's more than just like, you know, like an okay character. I'm happy to see him more in the forefront. And even though I don't really like Heimerdinger's lack of
anything,
I don't know, the things that he needs to have, I do like the idea. I like the pairing of them because they're both gadgety, and between the two of them, it's like Ekko has more to teach him, which it shouldn't be that way, but it is that way. So I'm excited to see that story continue. So yeah, that's pretty much. I just wanted to say that. So there's lots of motorcycles for some reason.
It's fine. We can't have much to it. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I agree. I enjoy Ekko as well. It's just the fact that he is more of a side character. That I'm looking to see what he becomes later on. You know, his trajectory and the starting point is strong. It's just I didn't really vibe with him that much from what he has in the story. I'm excited to see future though, and I absolutely agree on that fight. That fight, which by the way, not that much fighting in this show. Given the amount of stylization it's got, the story it's trying to tell, you know, the opportunities,
which is good.
It is good. It is good.
Yeah,
it's good. Yeah. It's that. But even so, having the few that it does have, it's impressive that particular one stands out, because it's not even that significantly important to fight. It's not like it's Vi v Jinx or anything like that. It's just Ekko v Jinx, which is a kind of an odd combination in terms of narrative scale, but it works because of that tie to the past, like you said, and the infinite amount of just style and character they threw into that on the visuals. It was beautifully done. Loved it. So probably my favorite as well, which is impressive again, given the fact that it's not that really a big a deal in terms of story. But that's Ekko. I guess we go into the villains now, or main villain anyway, which would be Silco.
Yeah, this character, he grew on me very quickly. When he first showed up, I was worried about him before I saw the show because I watched the trailer, and every line in the trailer is like standard stock villain line, and they're all not bad, but it was just the fact that they were like coming like one after another. I was like, this character is just going to be, like the evil mastermind guy or whatever, and he is that, but he's not evil. Like whatever he is, he's not evil. Like he's very he's sort of like you can tell that he's the product of like a long and hard difficult like life. And his experience of that society, yes. But and also the fact that he's the kind of villain that you could easily see going on like monologues, and there was a point where I thought there's a point in his office after the time jump where he's just talking, and I'm going, what are we doing? Why is he talking at his desk to nobody? And then the camera pans up and he's talking to Jinx, who's up there listening to the whole thing. Loved that. Like that was like, okay, this show gets it. Like they're like at that point I stopped questioning anything. I was like, they know what they're doing. And then of course I had my complaints about Marcus and Heimerdinger, but for the most part, I mean, they really just get it. It's like people are not just going to sit at their desk. Hey, the world is blah blah blah. It's like, what are you doing? And then camera pans up. She's right there. It's like, yes, this is perfect. I love it. And he cares about her. I think is
which you aren't quite sure on right up until the end. You keep getting hints both ways.
Yeah,
I like that they drew that out and kind of kept you guessing.
I don't know,
without credence on either way.
I was sure,
and it hammered in. I had assumed so as well, but I wasn't like I thought they could put a rug pull on us. It was enough,
especially when he's certain. at the fountain with Vander, like talking to the statue of Vander at the fountain or whatever it was.
That's what I mean. That point was when they kind of hammered it in and kind of made it clear. Up until that stage, you aren't entirely certain, and then after that, it gets reinforced with the table scene. Obviously, I love that they didn't give you a clear-cut answer, because part of that question is the struggle of Jinx herself, and Vi as well. What is this dynamic? So the fact that they kept that for the viewer as well, it was very powerful.
Yeah.
What really impressed me about him was he's one of those rare villains who, when they say that they genuinely want to change the world around them, I actually buy it. Like you actually kind of like the way he goes about it is obviously horrible and just awful. But at the same time, like he really strikes you, at least to me, he struck me as someone who's just been like through the depths for so long and had to claw his way out just through just horrible means. Like who knows what he did in his past, to the point where he genuinely feels like he is the only one who can make these decisions, and I really appreciate that, because he obviously has he has selfish attributes, of course, but at the same time you feel like he's not doing this just for him. Like he genuinely believes in his cause, even if his cause is completely awful.
And was willing to sacrifice that cause for the character he cares about in Jinx. It was so well done. And the fountain scene again, Matt, was what made it for me. Like that was okay. This is great. He's actually talking to his old, personal connection about his new personal one, and how it's undermining him, and how he's still going to let it happen. It's real personal character motivation, as happens in real life. It's not just I have an evil plan, I'm going to make it happen, etc. I also liked I liked the show wasn't afraid to poke fun at the melodrama of it as well. Like when Jinx is mocking him for all those water speeches, and it's like, oh, you're going to tell me this again? He's like, no, I've got a new one. I love that, because it's just it's not like it's silly, it's not overplayed, it's justified, him being that melodramatic in the moment, but that doesn't stop it from being funny when it's called out, and he kind of, you see him kind of go, yeah, get that, because he's been through some shit. His best friend or partner tried to drown him in that goddamn water.
Yeah, for a reason, I'm guessing.
I mean, that's the one aspect about him. Like, I feel like his connection to Vander probably could have used a little bit more substance, but at the same time, we do still get enough to see like, where he's going with it. But at the same time, like, that's my one complaint, is like, I feel like we could have used maybe, I don't know, like at least one more flashback or just a little bit more context, because there are parts of it when especially when, Xander's still alive and they're interacting, that it feels a little rushed. Again, I'm not saying that's like a super distracting thing, and it by no means diminishes, Silco's overall, impact on the story. But at the same time, that's literally my only complaint with him.
Yeah, you both flagged fact that, and I completely agree, because that was the moment where it shows you and kind of you get a little bit of a flashback, but it never explains, despite the fact that we all know Vander must have had a good reason, as Fran said. It never actually tells us what the reason was or goes into detail about it. And I think it is a missing piece in their dynamic for the viewer.
Yeah.
It feels like you're obviously back Vander and almost certainly right, but you never actually get the proof of that. So it's always, it feels a bit missed opportunity.
Especially since they keep referring to them as being like as close as brothers. And that's a pretty like high tier bond. Like obviously they clearly had a lot of history and a lot of respect for each other at that point, but at the same time, like you don't really feel that, or at least I didn't.
Yeah, I think we kind of get a few hints as to what Silco may have done, just because of the small little interaction that they have when obviously Vander is being captured at this point, of like that Silco's nearly always been like this. It sounds like he's always had this intention of basically causing utter chaos, and kind of what he does actually do, he causes more harm to the city than good, in that he's bringing drugs in to destroy people's lives, to then use that to his advantage later by turning them into monsters to fight against Piltover. Like obviously you kind of get that whole intention never really said, but you figure out well enough because the writing's good. But like I feel like that must have been something that he's always had the idea of doing, is literally just causing ultimate chaos for their own personal end of getting something better out of it. And obviously that's not the way to go about it. Like that's not something that Vander could ever agree with. And I think that's what possibly led down that line. I mean, you can see just the level and extent that Silco as a character has always gone to. Like the moment that showed to me of him being like, he was always a villainous character, but the moment that got me the most was the moment he recognized that he could use Jinx to his advantage when she like jumped into his arms, and he's immediately like, I can use this, like instantaneous. You could see it in his eyes, and you can hear it in his voice to what he says. And that was that turning point for me of like, okay, this guy is the ultimate villain. He is not afraid to manipulate, in a sense, groom, not obviously for the sexual connotations comes with it, but grooming Jinx into becoming the ultimate weapon for his own control, even though she's not controllable in some areas like we see later on. The fact that he's done all of this, like he's created in his mind, but not necessarily, like there was always a little bit there, but done enough to push her to that edge for his advantage, for creating the dream that he wants, says a lot to me. And I will, just because, sorry, I just want to say this a little bit to what you guys were saying about like how he does love her. I do think he does love Jinx, but I feel like his line at the end when he's dying is both his love for her, but a final taking advantage of saying this to her so she will hate Piltover more than ever for his dying wish to destroy it. I think it was a final act of love and manipulation, because that's what his whole thing with her was. It was love and manipulation, like entwined in some way.
I have to rewatch the scene, but I didn't take that from that. I generally thought it was just a case of like, he wanted her to understand he wasn't going to betray her because of how much he values loyalty. I think it was that mixed with his own personal affection for her that was what bred that line. I didn't see a twist of the knife in that for myself, but I have to go back and re-look at it.
I think it's more just my own, like I don't necessarily know if it was in the scene. I think it's just from everything that happens after that is what kind of pushes me further to thinking that. But just because of who he is as a character, like everything he says has always had a sort of double meaning to it with how he interacts with people. I don't know if I'm explaining it well.
No,
I realize I may sound a bit crazy.
Before that point, I completely agree. He's all the makings of someone who would be that way, but I think by that point, we've seen that he's kind of broken down to the decision of, I value her over my dream of Zorn. Like, I think that's because we've seen that reinforced as a concept prior to this, and then hammer blown in by the last line from him. I think that's why it reads differently for me. I'm not convinced that was just like, let me manipulate to bring in a new asset to Zorn in my absence.
Yeah.
I will mildly disagree with the rest of you about the Vander connection with him. I think that the ambiguity there is probably a stylistic choice, and I think that it's a good one. I think it's an effective one, because what happened between them doesn't matter. Like, not really. It doesn't change, or it doesn't change anything about what is going on in the present, right? It can't. I think that you see enough from the rest of the story to from how the point of him as a character, right, is obviously, yeah, he's the manipulator at the start. What surprises him and the point of the arc is that by the end of it, he's no longer, and he's like, why am I not? Like, you know, it's that's his conflict, is that like, I have the perfect tool or the perfect weapon. I don't want to use her as one anymore, though. You know what I mean? So I definitely have a different take about like that last scene, although I'm open to rewatching it with that kind of context, like in mind, and seeing how I think it plays, because it literally didn't occur to me. I don't have like a hard disagreement there. It's just something that I didn't really pick up on at all. But yeah, I feel like he's it's not even just like love. It's almost like the surprise of the sensation that I think is the point of the character. You know what I mean? It's and that's what I think is effective about him.
Yeah, I love the line as well. Is there anything more unmaking than a daughter? Like, that is just a beautiful, beautiful line for him to have, especially given the isolation of that moment with the fountain, because that isn't like a place he returns to with Vander a lot. That's like the only time he does that, and has that.
It's the one time where you can get away with.
Well, it's the one time we see him.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And in direct contrast to the thing we have seen him repeatedly return to, which is the waterfront, and how he's saying, okay, this is the trauma version. This is where the current level of darkness, though I definitely had some beforehand, is coming from. This is the well of my hate kind of thing. And then when we've had this shift, it jumps over to the fountain, which is another example of the way of water. It can be seen, so it's artful on many levels. And then he's talking to Vander. You know, it's the only time it happens. And I think that lends it a lot of power, as opposed to if he'd just come backwards and forwards, something he just did a lot since he's killed him. You know, this seems like it's the first time he comes back to say, you know, to have a conversation with this person. And it's not the Vander he killed, it's the Vander he respected back in the day, you know, is the impression I'm getting. And it's very effective for me.
You could easily do a prequel series with him and Vander.
Oh, yeah. I don't need to see that, but I completely agree. They could do that story.
Do a Kyoshi Books situation and just like do a novelization of Arcane.
That would work.
It has so many possibilities for this world, like novelizations, graphic novels.
But also at the same time, this series and the ones that kind of follow it, obviously, I think can stand by themselves. It's not not every setting, not every story needs to explode into a franchise in a setting. I think it's can sometimes.
Well, that's also detriment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely wary of franchises as like in general, because most of them are terrible, or they take something that was good and they stretch it into a spot where it just should never have gone. Like, and it happens routinely. And I think stories, for them to have the power that they do, I think that a story really needs an ending. You know what I mean? And so when you don't let the story end, you can tell it for quite a period of time, but I think it does deserve an ending. And by the same logic, if you keep going back to the beginning, the story, you can't have a beginning. You have the story has a beginning and an end. You know what I mean? If you keep going before it, it's like, what are we doing? But I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing more of that. However, I don't require it. And it's sort of like the same kind of thing. I think I really admire their choices of flashbacks and what little they do give us and how much they encapsulate it in it. The prime example, again, is the Ekko fight. You could have done an entire episode where he's playing that game with Jinx, and then it comes back around to this, where it's like, now I'm dodging her like I did back then. You know what I mean? But you see it just in the 30 seconds that they show you, like in the middle of it. So it's masterful, right? And the same thing with like Mel's mother, like with the scene where she beheads the princess or whatever, the place that we're conquering, you know, where, like the young captive gets their head cut off. You get exactly what the relationship with her mother has always been. You don't need a full episode about, well, this is my relationship with my mother expounded upon. It's like, you get it in those 2 minutes. It's like, that is it. That is the relationship.
That particular instance, by the way, just because it's come to mind now, is another example of that unmaking of a daughter thing. It's repeated throughout the series. You know, the one outburst we get with the mother and the kind of thing that really helps explain her as a character, at least from what she's saying, and I buy it, is that you couldn't be around you anymore. I couldn't see you looking at me and judging every decision I had to make. You know, all the hard decisions. But also, I love that.
And at the start of the show, why does Vander back down and turn away? Like, let's go back home. Yeah, he's worried about you know what I mean. It's the theme. So it's to me, it's like I got what I needed to get out of all those character interactions. I feel like if they wanted to keep telling them, I just hope that they have like a clear purpose in mind. Otherwise, I hope that they're really, you know, give a lot of thought to anything that they go back to. You know what I mean? Because I think they did so beautifully that it's almost like if you keep picking at it, I think you can only unravel it. You know?
Yeah, that's the reason I say what I say. I mean, I don't have an issue with settings and franchises expanding and getting more stories told with them, but the problem is they have to maintain the same quality, and they never do, like ever. After a certain point, they all start slipping to a certain degree, and if you can avoid that, great. But realistically, that's never happened yet. So that's the main problem I have. And the other issue is, of course, saturation. If you hear the same story or same franchise have the same repeat for so many times without too much variation, I think Avatar's hit that point a while ago now. It just
I have a point about Avatar after we're done recording, by the way.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to what they do with the next season, though. This story and show has a lot of potential to go forward. If they keep the same production team, the same writing team, and keep the same quality, very, very excited.
And keep it tight knit. They've been doing. We don't need like 30 episodes a season. Just keep it compact. Maybe like 10 instead of 9 or something. But still, just keep it. Keep it streamlined.
Everything about this, from what must be a horrendously expensive production cost to the fact that they're clearly the Ekko scene, the everything, like trying to pack so much into short bits, right? I can't imagine that they'd want to even do a season like that. They'll keep it concise because it's part of their style. It's part of what made it so slick and dynamic.
They've made choices in creating this they didn't need to make, given the mandate they would have been working with. So the fact that holds true, and the immeasurable success that they've got as a result, they're not going to be changing course. They're going to be keeping at least, maybe they'll push it to 12 episodes or something, but they won't go any further than that. This is not going to be a drawn out story, by my estimation, and I certainly hope I'm right.
And it's a perfectly done cliffhanger, by the way. I just wanted to say, as they're trying to negotiate sort of like a peace, right? Like let's calm it down here. Here comes a fucking rocket.
and it's not like this. It's just unsatisfying because it leaves you questioning. Like there's not like it's a missing piece there. It's an additional springboard into the next story. It's the perfect cliffhanger because you're not missing stuff. It's not like, oh, what happened there? No, it's what will happen next time. It's a fine distinction, but it really does hold. And
the double points
wanting more, but not in a way that's frustrating.
Exactly. There's no frustration with this. It's just they cemented the conclusion in the finale with all the character arcs being dealt with, all the stories, all the themes have been tied up, everything's been set. We've had Jinx's and Vi's ultimate conclusion, all that stuff. We've got Vander. We've got Silco's situation wrapped up, and Jace is like, okay, progress. And then this next thing happens. It's not getting short before we hit that climax point. It's very effective.
And it leads to lots of different threads. So we've got Caitlyn and Vi, obviously my background here, of seeing this going towards them. Caitlyn devastated, Vi not even knowing how to deal with this. Then we've got this additional part of the explosive going towards where the council people are, and Mel being the one who senses it before it's even anywhere nearby. There's something that's going on there. So there's an additional mystery element of okay, what's going to have happened with this? But also, how has Mel done this? So it's lots of more questions coming out that hopefully do get explored in season 2, which apparently is coming 2023.
I need her to be alive next season, just because there's so.
I don't want her to die.
She can't be dead next season.
More than anyone in that, aside from Victor, because I like him, but more than anyone else in that room, I need her to be alive because they've got such a great hook with her backstory being brought into the forefront and her attitude going into this and what it will be after that. You know what I mean? It's got to be. I mean, I expect her to be a real driving force in the next narrative, and I can't wait to see more of that.
Not to mention all the stuff with the kingdom that her mom's coming from, and that
the backstory,
or that's on the horizon. That I can see that's probably going to be a factor too.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do with the story that I said before with the rest of the main city states. Demacia and Noxus is going to be really interesting with this creative team. I can't wait, and I think that's the thing that everyone agrees with once they finish the show. They loved it, and they can't wait to see what comes next. Bar none. I've not met anyone who's been like, this show is terrible. even online, which to be honest, I haven't done a massive deep dive, but I can't imagine anyone but the crazies who just hate everything.
It'll just be like some weirdo who thinks there's some kind of leftist agenda to everything. Like that's the only possible like bottom rung like opinion I think you'll find of somebody who hates this, because it's so unhateable. I can't imagine anyone rational.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
unless you really dislike League of Legends,
which is not rational.
I'm not saying it's rational. I'm just saying that's a possibility.
You have to come in. You having watched this, you have to have an entirely independent overlaying agenda to not think it's at least good. You might not love it, which I think would also be weird. But you can't look at this and say, nah, that's not good. What are you pointing to that you're saying that is, if you don't think this show is good, is what I'm saying.
I've only seen a few polarizing things that have come. Some from people who I know were League of Legends fans who weren't happy about like character image design changes, which like was, from what I've gathered, was just that they had more clothes on than they do in the game originally. And that seemed to be a complaint. I was like, sure.
They made everything more realistic on that level. So it's bombasticness in general across the board, like even just the size of the weapons, and and the fact that they don't very often do the thing, with their abilities or whatever, is the main thing. Exceptions like Jace with his hammer. That's the thing you can do. Oh look, he's doing the thing. This is blast.
His hammer, by the way, that was the one thing that I thought, that is a comically large hammer for such like a sort of slight build that he has.
Because of the game, it's his weapon in the game. So it's like that's why it happens that way.
It was stylistic.
And then again.
But I was almost like laughing when he pulled that out. I was like,
but it's just like the action side. The first thing he does was kill a kid. It's like, oh crap! Just the level of like detail and stuff they put into it. Even though with this great big action scene, it ends with that same level of dramatic.
Yeah, so very poignant. Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, like you carry a big fucking.
Kind of sums up the show as a whole, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's on point. It's poignant. It makes sense. It respects the characters. Respects its own story. It has driving, interlocking themes. It's just. Chef's kiss.
So if you can't tell already, we really highly recommend this.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
10
I mean, I really think you'd be kind of a fool not to watch it. Like honestly, like why would you not? Why would you deprive yourself? It's a great story.
Yeah,
it has something for everyone.
And I can't wait to see what happens next. But that sounds like a good point to end on. So Fran, if you'd like to say goodbye.
Yes. Bye everyone. Watch Arcane, please. Thank you very much.
Evan.
And like she said, you should definitely watch it. EvanNova95. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Matt.
Thanks for listening to us. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you enjoy the show. I'm sure you've already seen it. If you haven't, you shouldn't have made it this far. But anyway, thanks again, and have a nice day.
Have a great one, guys. I still have an outro. Goodbye.